Men's eyes were made to look, and let them gaze. I will not budge for no man's pleasure, I. This is Burn While Reading.
Oh my gosh, we made it to 2 episodes.
Do you bite your thumb at me?
Oh, and I'm Ari. It's not a phase, Mom. It's who I am.
And if you haven't been keeping up with the last episode or the blog, we are covering the most famous Shakespeare play,
But definitely not.
Romeo and Juliet.
But definitely not the best.
But definitely not the best.
I'm sorry to be that person, but
In my opinion, it is the absolute worst Shakespeare play.
oh no. That goes to Henry V for sure. I've never even read Henry V. That's how bad it is. No one reads Henry V unless they have to.
I'll give you that one.
I'm sorry, you can't stop giggling.
Alright, where did you first read this book?
Oh god, my mind is fuzzy. Sometime I don't want to say 10th grade because that's when we did the Scottish play. I want to say it was 9th grade that we read Romeo and Juliet. But it might have been sometime in middle school, and that would make more sense because if we read it in middle school, I erased all of middle school from my mind to avoid trauma.
Okay, because the first time I read this was 9th grade.
It was 9th grade?
It was when, I think it was the third book we read in class. Because we read The Odyssey and Babel first. Our teacher wanted us to go in order.
Oh yeah, we did Odyssey in 8th grade, but it was like SparkNotes Odyssey for middle schoolers.
Your school was more advanced than mine, let's be understand.
But it wasn't like real Odyssey. It was like, we're gonna give you some goofy clip art pictures of things that happened in the Odyssey, and then like a little breakdown that's like this big. You can't see me, listeners, but I've got my fingers like maybe like 5 or 6 inches apart. Anyway, let's get into
But that was the first time I read it, and the only reason I finished the book was because I wanted to understand her commentary.
I'm trying to remember. I want to say it was 9th grade that we read it because I remember watching the Claire Danes and Leonardo DiCaprio version after we finished it and thinking, oh my god, this is so much better.
I don't even want to get into that. That is a whole nother podcast episode in and of itself.
I'm pro DiCaprio and Danes, but that's just me.
I like it. But some of the choices they made, some of those choices make me question my life.
John Leguizamo as Tybalt? That's the questioning choice. I mean, he was good, but something about him just...
Drag Queen Mercutio.
I love Drag Queen Mercutio.
Okay, I'm a fan of Drag Queen Mercutio, but, let's talk about playing into gay stereotypes there.
Yeah, okay. Alright, we've talked for 5 minutes. We haven't even gotten to the book itself. We've talked for 5 minutes about the things that we have that are an issue. Okay, so if you're one of those people that thinks that William Shakespeare was a real person, just saying, I don't know. He could have been. He might not have been. He might have been 7 people. Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet sometime in the mid-1590s. Wrote. Well, I mean, yeah. No, you're right. Maybe about 1592, 1594, sometime in the mid-1590s.
Late 1500s.
Right. And he didn't, we say write with air quotes because he didn't actually write it. It was a theatrical ripoff of an English poem, which was a ripoff of a French translation of an Italian story that was written down by a guy named Matteo Bandello. So by the time this story became popular to the 16th century English crowd, it had already been rehashed so many times that it's a wonder we know the characters' names are actually Romeo and Juliet.
So basically Romeo and Juliet is a game of telephone.
Basically,
And Shakespeare is damn lucky they didn't have copyright laws.
this is probably exactly why we're convinced that there was actually a balcony in the original screenplay. Well, screenplay. They didn't have cameras in the 16th century, did they? Why we're convinced that there was like a balcony in the original play when they didn't even have balconies in 16th century England.
I think the story my English teacher told me was he was on a trip to Italy, saw this play, and decided, I'm going to steal it.
So they're
and
actually
make it famous.
So they had actually turned the story into a play when Shakespeare went to Italy?
Or heard it recited something along those lines.
Huh. That's really interesting.
I specifically remember Romeo and Juliet was not the first play induction of it.
Huh.
It wasn't the first play form of the story.
That's Alright, well listeners, you can do the research.
It could also just be now I'm remembering back like 8 years, okay?
Uh-huh.
It could also just been like it was a poem recital or whatever.
Well yeah, that's what I thought that I had read. It was like a story in Italy, and then Bandello was the one that wrote it down and was like, this would be great as a poem.
It ain't Shakespeare's.
No. It's not Shakespeare's, but what it was Shakespeare's kind of, it was like his breakout hit. Like before he wrote Romeo and Juliet, he had done comedies and he had done histories, but there weren't plays that he's really well known for. After he wrote and put on Romeo and Juliet in the mid-1590s, that was when his golden years started. After that, he wrote Othello, he wrote Hamlet, he wrote Macbeth. Oh, darn it. He wrote all of the plays that were like he's known for. After Romeo and Juliet.
I couldn't help but notice you've only listed off his tragedies.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because before Romeo and Juliet, it was all comedies and histories. After he wrote Romeo and Juliet, he really tried to combine some of the comedic aspects of his earlier plays with more tragic elements. And then around that time, that's when he wrote all of his major tragedies. And that's what he became known for. We're going to talk about later whether or not Romeo and Juliet is actually a tragedy.
Let's just say thanks William Shakespeare for creating Nicholas Sparks. Would we have Nicholas Sparks if Romeo and Juliet was not a huge thing?
Well, see, that's the thing, is that before this time, you didn't really see romance as being you didn't see romance as like a major driving force.
Across the lovers, really.
Right, the whole idea of like these people are in love.
Except in like ancient Greek myths.
Yeah, but Shakespeare was writing this at a time when like it wasn't common to see stories where people fell in love and they couldn't be in love, and that was seen as like a tragedy. Love was not a major driving force for sad stuff. So really, we can say that like it's because of Shakespeare that we have The Notebook right now. You can blame Shakespeare for The Notebook.
Shakespeare.
Here's the thing about Romeo and Juliet is that I'm assuming if you're sitting here listening to this, you've read Romeo and Juliet, or you've seen a movie about Romeo and Juliet. You know the story. Everyone knows the story. There's nothing new under the sun.
There's not a lot to get out of Romeo and Juliet.
If you've heard the words Romeo and Juliet, you know enough about the story that we don't need to sit here and explain it to you.
Alright. We open our play with two servants of the Montagues in town just being assholes.
Right, so apparently the servants of these two families in Verona, Italy, the Montagues and the Capulets, are fighting. Over what? Who cares? I don't know. Make something up. Be creative. It could be anything. I don't know. Depending on what movie you've seen, maybe they tend to each other's gardens right next door to each other and they're trying to outdo each other.
Maybe they give you an explanation. We are literally dropped into this scene this one guy is like, yo, look, I see some Capulet servants coming. You want to piss them off?
Basically.
I'm going to fight myself at them.
This is the first major issue with this play is within, like, 2 minutes of it starting. You have no idea why these families are fighting over... It could be anything. It could be literally anything. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that their kids are eventually going to fall in love.
Is that the Montagues stole a goat from the Capulets?
A goat?
A goat.
Maybe like 500 years ago they were like playing a game of ball and one of them
Maybe they got cheated out of a real estate deal.
That-
Point is, we'll never know.
That one episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, that's what I'm thinking of.
And also, it's important to note that biting your thumb at someone is the equivalent of flipping the bird.
Do you bite your thumb at me, sir? No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I do bite my thumb, sir. Can we keep doing that? Like, I that's more fun than flipping the bird. Flipping the bird's kind of boring.
I know.
So the Montagues and the Capulets are fighting, and the Prince of Verona is like, I swear to God, if I catch you or your Goonies fighting on my streets again, you are in deep shit. Full stop. End of story.
And in the middle of the servant fights, the heads of the family randomly come down to the village.
Oh shit, there's a brawl going on. Let's go check it out. Fight. We find out that Romeo, who is the son of the House of Montague, he's been acting like very...
Okay, and our first glimpse of Romeo is him sitting like some emo child on a wall. Basically like, woe is me. My life is terrible. I don't know why I should go on.
Mm-hmm.
Benvolio and Papa Montague.
They're talking back and forth, and
about how it's a good thing Romeo wasn't there, and how depressed Romeo has been, and how much little emo shit he's been.
And Benvolio's all like, yeah, this girl Rosaline told him that she wasn't like interested in him because she's not interested in love, like no exception.
She's not interested in him.
Well, not just him, but love. Period.
Benvolio's like, yo, what's your problem?
And Romeo's,
what's your problem, fam?
And Romeo's like, Rosaline rejected me, and so I sit in my room all day and I draw the curtains.
Basically, my mom kicked me out of my room and I can't write angsty poetry anymore
I want
Rosaline.
to sit in my room and write poetry.
Because my mom hates me and doesn't understand.
No one in my family understands me.
No one loves me. The world is against me.
I should say, like, we were all there at one point. We were all in high school. We were all the same age as Romeo at one time. And let's be real. We've all had an emo phase. I'm not trying to make fun of, like, people that actually have depression.
No, he's a very relatable character.
He's
as a high schooler.
He's completely relatable when you're in that age, but when you get past a certain age, even if you still have depression, I mean,
right,
it's still very over the top.
He's the kind of person that sits in a dark room listening to Linkin Park and Nickelback.
Romeo's a scene kid.
He sits in a dark room, crying about his life and listening to Linkin Park, Evanescence, and Nickelback, all your typical emo bands.
Nickelback's not an emo band. I take offense to that. Nickelback's a nothing band. No one should be listening to no one should be listening to Nickelback ever again. Just stop. We're done. No more Nickelback.
I'm just trying to think of what I listened to during my emo phase, okay?
I don't even think I had an emo. I mean, I had a brief emo phase, but I was listening to Linkin Park the same time that I was listening to all of the like pop punk garbage that came out in the mid 2000s. So I really liked Boys Like Girls and stuff like that. I liked Good Charlotte.
So
Meanwhile, Daddy Capulet is trying to get who is now Juliet is 13. Juliet is 13 when this is all happening. She hasn't even turned 14 yet. And Daddy Capulet is trying to get her married off to this guy named Paris, who, let's be real, he's kind of a skis when he first comes in.
But he's the cousin of the Prince of Verona.
Which, so yeah, like, this is supposed to be like...
I got the impression he was in, like, his early to mid-30s.
That old god!
Maybe late 20s.
Gross. I don't want to... Well...
Alright, let's split the difference and say he's 30. Because he's somewhere between between 25 and 35.
I want him to be so much younger than that to try to make this less schemy, but it's just
You
not
can't
happening.
make it right. But he's a relatively decent guy.
Quite,
Because Juliet mentioned she thinks she's too young to get married.
but that's later. This is a conversation that's just happening between Paris and Daddy Capulet, and this is just me, kind of skeevy for him to say something like, there are girls younger than 13 who make very happy mothers. That's freaking skeevy. I don't care how over
let's take into account the time.
Yes, let's take into
account.
Girls
as young as 10 were getting married back then.
I know, but that doesn't mean it's any less gross.
From a modern perspective, it's skeevy as hell, and he's a pedophile.
I'm gonna suffer
but you've
through
got to
Lolita.
take into account the historical context.
He's also, at the same time, planning this gigantic party at his house. So around this time, we jump back to the Capulet house, and Juliet finally hears about the fact that Paris wants to marry her.
Oh, yeah.
And around this time, she's not as so vehemently against it as she is later on in the play, but she's still like, guys, I'm 13. That's gross, so no thank you.
Now, Juliet's found out about this whole thing because her nursemaid is super flighty and can't keep a secret to save her life. Honestly, the reason I think she doesn't want she told Juliet everything is because if she gets married, she's out of a job. Nurse is out of a job if Juliet is married.
Damn you, I never thought of that.
Like, sorry, Cynical Jen is here.
I know, I kind of like Cynical Jen. Cynical Jen has good theories.
But at the same time, it doesn't make sense because she's okay with her marrying Romeo. But I think that's the romantic in her.
Potentially.
And also, if she scratches Juliet's back with this, when Juliet has kids and needs someone to watch them, she'll remember good old Nurse.
So we're at the masquerade, and enter the only character that's actually important in this entire mess, Mercutio.
Romeo is just like, oh, there's Rosalie. But everyone's keeping them apart.
Where does Rosalie... When does Rosalie show up during the masquerade?
I thought he went to the... Oh, no. He went to the masquerade because he's like, Rosalie's related to the Capulets. So, maybe she'll be there. And everyone's favorite hothead, besides Prince Zuko, recognizes him.
Oh, Tybalt.
Tybalt
Tybalt.
But Tybalt is smart enough not to cause a fucking scene at a party right away.
Well, just barely. I mean, he's doing his cat thing. He's stalking the enemy, but he's not ready to pounce yet.
So he tells Papa Capulet that, oh my god, some Montague snuck in. And he's like, so which ones? And he's like, it's Romeo. It's like, okay, Romeo's a good kid.
Yeah,
he's like, a fucking Montague, but he's a good kid. He's gonna start shit. He just wants to drink.
Even Daddy Capulet is like, so what if he's a Montague? He's not causing any harm. Just leave him alone. He's a good kid.
He just wants to drink and dance.
So around this time, Romeo and Juliet meet. They flirt a little bit.
And Romeo's reaction is, my god, she's an angel.
They can't even see each other's faces, though. This is purely based on, like, they meet, they flirt, they have clever words, and then they kiss. It takes like 5 minutes. They're all over each other in 5 minutes.
Over the course of 5 minutes, they fall in lust. I refuse to call it love.
No, it's most likely lust. Because, honestly, it's literally just like, it's all innuendo and flirting.
Okay. On Romeo's half, it's most definitely lust. I think Juliet is getting to the rebellious phase. She's 13, she just found out her dad's arranging her marriage. And she's like, fuck this, I'm gonna flirt with a guy.
Rebellious Juliet, I love it.
And maybe I'll be deemed unsuitable.
Ooh, yes. And
because she doesn't want to get married.
And you think it's gonna work. And then they both find out around the same time
that they're from opposing houses, and their hearts are just rended apart by the drama.
And this is where the whole fuck this. If only Taylor Swift song kicked in right now. If at this point, Romeo, even though he had decided, okay, I love her, I want to marry her, if he had gone to Papa Capulet, or bypassed Papa Capulet altogether and gone to the prince, they would have gotten married and no one would have died.
Yes. What we see here is a failure to communicate.
Because the prince just wants the families to stop fighting.
This could have been
they're
it.
not going to fight if they're the same family.
This could have been it.
If the only daughter of the Capulets marries the only son of the Montagues, we're good.
So, yada yada balcony speech, that's like the least important thing about this entire play.
I only have one thing to say about the balcony scene. Wherefore does not mean where are you?
I think at this point, everyone has been corrected on that at least once. You don't need to lie about it.
Wherefore means why. She's not asking where is Romeo, she's asking why the fuck are you a Montague?
Why the fuck is you Romeo? That's the only part of the entire speech that's important.
That's the only thing I have to comment
the
on.
whole leaning her hand on her cheek and oh how I wish that I could be that hand. It's nothing.
That's a 15-minute. No, you hang up. No, you hang up. No, you hang up. I love you more. I love you more.
And we assume that this is around the time that they get the idea of, hey, let's just like Vegas elope. Let's get Vegas hitched.
Let's Vegas this thing.
And Romeo is friends with a friar who has a thing for plants, and he's like, yo, friar, me and this girl are gonna get Vegas hitched. Can you hook us up?
And I would like to point out that the friar, or father, whatever you want to call him,
Friar
is probably the most culpable person in this entire play.
This is questionable, and I think that we could spend however long talking about whose fault it really is. Honestly, it still boils down to Romeo's fault when you rewind enough. But yeah, we can blame her.
It's 90%. We'll split 50-50 between them.
Because I have other people I want to blame.
The friar married them without permission of anyone, which was hella illegal.
Yeah, this is true.
There was no parental permission. He didn't get permission from the head of the brotherhood or whatever. He's just like a simple monk. He doesn't have permission to marry whoever he wants, especially not nobility.
So, Romeo meets up with Juliet's nursemaid, and he says, tell Juliet we're getting married this afternoon, meet me at Friar Lawrence's. And then
there's one little problem after the wedding. Back then, weddings weren't considered valid unless they had sex that night.
But they do consummate the marriage later on.
They do.
Just not that night.
Romeo didn't think this through, because he didn't bother thinking, fuck, I need to sleep with her tonight. He's just like, we're gonna get married and it's all gonna be peachy keen.
So
Romeo is not good at planning. He then realizes after they're married that he somehow has to sneak into her bedroom to sleep with her in order for their marriage to be a thing.
And he doesn't actually get a chance to do it at this time, I don't believe. I think some time goes by, doesn't it, before he gets a chance?
He doesn't.
But it happens after the whole where shit hits the fan.
Really? Oh, right.
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
The shit hits the fan first.
The shit hits the fan before he gets a chance to consummate his marriage.
Okay. This part
Can I do the fan?
Is mostly Tybalt's fault.
Yes and no.
Tybalt was not happy with Romeo flirting with Juliet.
And I love Mercutio with all my heart, but dude.
But Mercutio is incredibly loyal to his friends.
He's incredibly loyal and he's incredibly hot-headed.
Tybalt is rip-roaring pissed.
And he's talking a lot of shit.
He thinks Romeo's up to something with Juliet, and he's not wrong.
Yeah.
So he starts throwing accusations everywhere.
And of course he's walking down the street while Mercutio is talking shit about Tybalt to Benvolio. And Tybalt shows up, and he's like...
And it should be noted that Mercutio is also related to the prince.
That he is. He is related to the prince.
He is not related to either of these families. He's supposed to be a neutral third party.
But he's not.
He fails at it.
He's so on Romeo's side during this entire thing.
But, if you think about it, it's kind of fair because Paris is on the Capulet side.
So Tybalt shows up, and he's like, hey, where's your buddy Romeo? I got beef with him.
And Mercutio's basically like, well, you gotta go through me first.
And he has something... Mercutio's best... I mean, all of Mercutio's dialogue is pure gold, but I think his best dialogue comes from this scene. I mean, you heard it in the Stinger, like, he has the best lines in this scene.
Mercutio is the best, and Benvolio is the most sensible.
So Romeo shows up, and Tybalt's like, hey, I fucking hate you. And Romeo's like, you know what? I wish I could hate you, but I can't. I actually love you. And you kind of get the aside of, like, because you're family, and I'm kind of not allowed to hate you anymore.
Because reasons.
But at this point...
And
go ahead.
So, Tybalt will not let this thing go.
No, he won't. And neither will Mercutio.
He is reborn ready for a fight, and goddammit, he's gonna have a fight.
And Mercutio is also ready for a fight. Like, he is just
and
itching for
Mercutio's
it.
like, you come into my streets, you talk shit about my friends, you're gonna get your ass whooped.
So they're both itching for a fight, and so they start dueling, and Romeo tries to get between them. And this is where Tybalt pulls his fucking... It's a dick move. He stabs Mercutio under Romeo's arm, and then runs away. Like, he doesn't even stick around for the rest... He doesn't stick around to watch Mercutio die, because he knows it's gonna happen.
He basically stabs him in the back when he's not expecting it. Like, this is the equivalent of stabbing someone in the back.
Except figuratively in the back, because it's more on his side, but he's literally doing stabbing, so...
You are kicking a man when he's down. He's like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna disengage from this thing. You're like, well, nope, death.
And this is around the time that we say that Mercutio might have been at fault, but it's really more in a sarcastic way, because as he's dying, he still has time to blame Romeo for getting in the way of the fight, and that's when he pulls his whole plague on both your houses thing. Mercutio's curse. The curse of Mercutio.
Now, Tybalt just killed Romeo's best friend that's not related to him.
And he has the gall to come back. And Romeo's like, you bastard, you killed my best friend. You know what's gonna happen to you.
My name is Romeo. You have killed my best friend. Prepare to die.
You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not. So they fight, and Romeo kills him in a blind rage. And then, that's when the prince shows up, after Romeo's killed Tybalt.
After Romeo has killed someone, and the prince is already sworn to kill the next person who does this.
He comes in and he's like, what did I just say? Oh my god, you killed my cousin. Why? Why is Mercutio dead on the ground? He's family. What did you do to him?
And he has made a public declaration about this. He can't go back on it. So he's like, well, fuck.
So Benvolio tells the prince, hey, I know Romeo did this thing that you said no one should do, but he only killed Tybalt to avenge your cousin's death.
So the prince has a little bit of mercy.
He thinks that what he's doing is merciful, yeah. He's like, instead of giving him jail time, or, killing him. I'll just...
Which he is fully entitled to do. He exiles him.
He exiles him to
And he has until sunrise to leave town.
And then the nurse comes to Juliet with her flightiness.
Which would have been fine. This whole thing would have been fine if he had just married her and he needed to sleep with her to make it valid.
Well, but here's the thing, is that even if they did the whole consummation of the marriage thing before all this nonsense happened, no one knows about it. You didn't tell anyone, hey, I'm married.
And also, at this point in time, would have been the time for Romeo to go, but sir, I just solved all your problems in the future by marrying the daughter of the Capulets.
If he had just told, I mean, woulda, coulda, shoulda. It's all woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Then we would, and there were 2 witnesses, so it was technically a legal marriage. Then we would have been good. And I would like to point out the only reason Romeo was able to marry Juliet without any of his friends wondering where he was because he's been being a little emo turd.
So
for
nobody's
the past
keeping,
month or so.
and nobody's keeping
So
tabs on him
everyone
anyway.
thought he was all great.
Mm-hmm. So the nurse goes to Juliet because the nurse has found out what's happened between Romeo and Tybalt. And of course she's being super flighty, and she plays around with it for like 10 minutes before she finally admits what's going on. And poor Juliet, I keep saying this, she's 13 years old, and already at the age of 13, she's lost a family member and her husband.
Well, not the husband fully yet.
Her legal husband.
Well, no, I meant, like, she hasn't lost him fully.
Well, but he's
not physically dead.
He's not dead, but she, like, in her whole soliloquy, she's like, he might as well be. I'm never gonna see him again. So Romeo comes back the night before he's supposed to be exiled. They consummate their marriage. And after he leaves, Juliet's parents and Paris go to visit her and are like, oh, honey, I know you're sad about Tybalt dying, but you should stop crying because we have really good news. We found this really nice guy, Paris, and he wants to marry you. And Juliet, of course, because she can't talk about the fact that she just married and consummated.
She starts crying harder.
She starts crying more, and she's like, no, I can't marry him. I'm sorry. You need to understand. I'm so young. I don't know how to love yet. And it's all really ironic bullshit because
and he's like,
what she just did. But
it's okay. We'll wait until you're 16 to get married.
Actually,
or was it just 2 years?
No, this was around the time where Daddy Capulet says, actually, it's not okay, and absolutely flips shit, and is like, you are my only daughter, I raised you to have respect for your parents, and he basically threatens to kick her out on her ass if they don't get married.
But Paris was going to do the right thing.
Paris was going to do the right thing.
Paris
was going to do the right thing. Her mom was going to do the right thing. They're all like, hey, maybe you should calm down a little bit. But no, Daddy Capulet is like red in the face screaming at her. And it's such a weird turn on its head because he seemed like he was being reasonable at the beginning.
Because we're also talking about the guy an act ago was like, Romeo, he's a good kid, leave him alone.
So Juliet leaves home to go visit Friar Lawrence and quote-unquote confess her sins.
The problem with this plan is, it involves Juliet taking her death.
Oh yeah, we haven't even,
And the problem with that is that after everything, what's the one thing that's going to bring Romeo back to town faster than anything else? News that his beloved young wife has died. And they knew this. And the friar was like, okay, you drink this basically low dose of poison that's gonna knock you into a coma?
It's essentially a paralytic, yeah. So she goes to Friar Lawrence, and she's talking about, like, I really don't want to marry this guy, Paris, and the friar's
and
like...
also, I don't want to commit bigamy.
And so the friar's like, hey, here's a great idea. Just kill yourself. And gives her a paralytic.
But not really.
I mean, well, yeah, I know, not really.
Okay,
but
so he's like, okay, you drink this tonight.
It's a paralytic.
I will ride after Romeo and make sure he knows the truth before he gets the news.
Mm-hmm.
Something happens along the way. I think his horse goes lame or something.
He gives the friar is super irresponsible, and he gives the letter to a friend, and is like, find a way to get this mail to Mantua, and his friend can't find a way to do it. So
Romeo doesn't get the letter, or he passes the letter on his way back?
It never gets mailed. It never gets sent to Mantua.
Oh, okay.
So
he never gets the letter, basically.
So he doesn't get a letter. What happens is a messenger from the Montague family comes to visit him in Mantua, and nobody in the Montague family knows what's going on. So Juliet takes the poison on her wedding night. She dies on what's supposed to be her wedding day to Paris, and they get her all buried and ready to go. And this guy, Balthazar, from the Montague family, meets up with Romeo before he can hear any other kind of news. And he's like, hey, sorry, Juliet kinda kicked the bucket. And Romeo has a meltdown. He grabs the nearest, like, apothecary that he can find. He just grabs this dude and is like, I need you to...
He grabs a lot of poison.
Oh yeah, he's like, I need you to give me the strongest
He grabs
poison.
enough poison that will instantly kill him, presumably. But he doesn't trust the apothecary, so he also grabs a knife.
He's already got a knife on him. Like, he doesn't really...
He's like, I'm already dead without her, basically. So he rushes back to Verona, where he's not supposed to be, breaks into the Capulet tomb.
While Paris is going to visit...
While Paris is outside, weeping and crying, mourning his beloved wife-to-be,
So
who died before her time. And
Romeo's in, like, a blind rage right now. They fight.
so he just, like, outright slaughters him.
Yeah, he...
And the young kid who was with him, too, right?
Oh, no, the kid makes it out alive. The kid runs away.
Okay, because for some reason in my head I've always had a kid dying, too.
It depends on the version. I don't think that, I mean...
I think in the play script, the kid gets away and runs and gets the prince.
Yeah, because that's the version that I read, was the version where... There were actually, like, a lot of scenes from the version
I think
that I
in
read this
a
time
couple
around.
of the movies, the kid gets killed, too.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, a groundskeeper finds the bodies and gets the prince.
Mm-hmm.
But,
So...
so Romeo then goes into the tomb, which, if you watch the Leonardo DiCaprio version, is fucking ridiculous.
Isn't it, like, this beautiful, like, gorgeous
it's like this
family
beautiful
crypt?
mausoleum decked out in crystals and gems and thousands of candles and gold.
It's so...
It is over the top. It looks like something you would find in Vegas.
That's so extra. So...
It is so extra, just like Romeo and Juliet.
He enters the tomb, and I want to point out that Friar Lawrence was there. He was supposed to be there watching Juliet to make sure that she woke up when she was supposed to.
Yeah.
Friar Lawrence leaves for like 5 minutes, and that's the time that Romeo
He goes on a potty break, basically.
That's when
and
Romeo...
That's when Romeo enters the tomb, sees Juliet lying in the middle, very ceremonially laid out.
He does...
And it's like, okay, I'm gonna do it. So he gets up on the ceremonial bed she is laying on in this mausoleum.
And he does his big speech.
Lays down, has a little dramatic speech, and downs the poison.
Mm-hmm. He takes the poison. He dies, like, depending on, like, which version you've seen and, like, how over the top they want to make it. Either he dies at her feet, or he, like, dies draped across her body in, like, weird fashion.
One version I watched had him dying right as she woke up. Like, she woke up, and that was the last thing he saw. Then Juliet has her little speech.
Little boohoo, oh my god.
About how he was so cruel for dying and not leaving any poison for her.
So she stabs herself instead.
So she takes the dagger he brought us back up and stabs herself through the heart. And this is the scene Friar Lawrence walks in on.
And the rest is history.
The prince gives a speech over Paris's body.
Mm-hmm. He does his whole,
to both parents about how their petty rivalry destroyed both their children and how this is basically all their faults.
And I mean, he's not wrong.
And he's not wrong. And that's the play.
So, alright, let's talk about issues, because I've got a lot.
Oh, don't get me started. I'm not gonna lie. When we decided to do this book, I tried rereading it. I couldn't get through it. I tried listening to it in podcast form. I could not get through it.
See, now I did
I am fine with 9th grade knowledge on this one. I'm not gonna lie.
that would explain why you forgot what actually happened so many times.
Much mixed up.
So many things
Because
mixed up.
I read the first act, listened to the second, and completely ignored the rest because I'm like, I cannot do this.
That's why so many times I had to stop and be like, wait, no, that didn't happen yet. I don't even know if the whole, like, consummation of marriage thing was actually, like, discussed. I think it was just kind of, like, assumed that was what happened.
I honestly, like, I remember the basic plot points.
But here's the thing, is that either of us could be right. Any of us could be right, because so much of this play is just passed back and forth between different playwrights and different poets that it doesn't... Maybe they did discuss consummating their marriage. Who knows?
What bothers me is not the play itself, because you can kind of take this play as reasons why you shouldn't hold grudges, or reasons why you need to talk to other people and work out your problems before it becomes a giant fucking feud.
This is why you don't keep
I
secrets.
have with this play is the romanticizing of it.
How so?
And it wasn't this way in Shakespeare's time. What it is now is it's hyped up to be this great love story.
Yeah.
And it's not. You have two fucking teenagers who are too stupid to talk to their families, who decide to take the world into their own hands and make a million mistakes, and then get out of all the consequences.
But at the same time, I mean...
all the major consequences. And it's not that great of a love story. It's actually pretty toxic.
This is all really true. But at the same time, we need to consider, like... I mean, if you're an adult and you're listening to this now, and by adult, I mean, like... real adult isn't really, like, a thing that we can say, but if
you are mentally or emotionally mature, you know it's not a good love story.
No, I mean, like, if we look back, being both in our 20s right now, if we look back to what we would have done when we were, like, 13 or 14 years old, maybe...
Alright, speak for yourself. I never would have run off and killed myself. I never would have gotten married because some guy told me he loved him.
But the impulsivity...
He loved me.
But, I mean, we need to acknowledge that, like, as teenagers, you're super impulsive as a teenager. Like,
no, as a teenager, you are super impulsive.
You have no... I'm a neuroscience major. You had essentially no prefrontal cortex when you were 13.
The problem comes in when impulsive teenagers don't have someone they can talk to about these impulses, and the supposedly rational adults in their lives, aka the nurse and Friar Lawrence, don't stop them from making these impulsive decisions, and in fact, aid and abet them.
This is absolutely true. The people that they think that they can trust the most, the people that raised them, the people that are supposed to, like, I've never been a huge churchgoer, so maybe this is just kind of, like, my assumption, but I was under the impression that as a child and as a teenager, if you have close connections to a church, you're supposed to be able to go to your church figure and talk about things, like as, like, a counselor, right? Like, that's not too far off the mark? Am I wrong?
That seems about accurate.
Okay, so all of the issue in this story isn't just that we have really impulsive children trying to make decisions for themselves. It's that you have these children that are making super impulsive decisions for themselves and really immature, irresponsible adult figures that they don't feel like they can trust.
And it's... Alright.
You sound frustrated.
Basically... You know my opinion on this play. It's fucking ridiculous, and it is the worst. Now, we did get an interesting question on Tumblr.
That's right, we did get a question, but I was not able to read it because, for whatever reason, I can't read questions on my side.
It's an anonymous question.
Okay.
Presumably from someone who's keeping track of our blog.
Yay.
And it says, cool work. For your Romeo and Juliet stuff, How do you think Shakespeare would look at his work being interpreted as highbrow when it was clearly meant for the masses / pretty divorced from its original meaning?
Oh.
Do you think that's why teens find it so dry and boring?
Oh my God. Becky.
Alright, so do you want to tackle it the first part first, or do you want me to?
There's kind of like two questions there, isn't there?
Yeah.
I want to talk about the whole, like, Shakespeare being treated as highbrow thing. If Shakespeare were alive today to know that we treat his plays the way that we do, he would die again laughing. Because
I like to think he would die again of laughter.
Oh yeah, he would die again laughing. Because that was the furthest thing from what he wanted.
Alright, he literally wrote these for the lowest common denominator in London.
Most certainly. And
it is literally full of dick jokes. Half the time, it's like, don't make me use my sword, and you are questioning which sword they mean.
But yeah, so many prick jokes.
I think, like, the scene where Romeo and Juliet are technically consummating their marriage, he's making all these allusions to his sword.
Oh, no, that was, what scene?
Or was that Mercutio?
It's always Mercutio.
I should have known it was Mercutio.
If you need to ask who made a given dick joke, the answer is always Mercutio.
Keeps making all these references to his sword. And naive teenage Jen was like, oh, okay, he means a literal sword.
That's the thing.
And then my teacher blamed me. And the sword is his penis.
These are not the hammer.
And I just died. Like, I was beat red because 9th grade Jen, you didn't talk about sex in class. Like, that was no. And suddenly, from between 8th grade and 9th grade, we were suddenly mature enough for dick jokes in class.
The whole idea, and actually going back to what we talked about earlier, like at the very beginning of the episode, about the whole, like, you didn't see a lot of, like, tragic love stories in plays. Most of that is because in higher society, which is where Romeo and Juliet rest, they're, like, close to royalty. It never happened. You married for political reasons and you married for economic reasons, but you didn't marry for love. The further down in the class spectrum you look, the more likely it was that you could actually be allowed to marry for love. And this is where I think, like, when we have all those discussions in English classes where we're like, oh no, I think that Romeo and Juliet is actually a comedy. There are a lot of comedic elements in it, but where it's seen as a tragedy could potentially come from the perspective of, I'm a commoner, and as a commoner, you can actually sometimes marry for love, because none of us have any wealth to go around. Yeah?
So, the technical definition of comedy and tragedy back then wasn't, is it funny or is it sad? It was, how many people are left living at the end of this thing?
This is true. This is very true.
So if the majority of people died, even if it was hilarious and everyone was getting their comeuppance, it was a tragedy. And if most people lived, because not everyone could live or it would be interesting, it was a comedy.
That's true.
Even if everyone was miserable.
Because there's, who dies in, someone dies in Much Ado About Nothing, right?
I've never read it.
I never read it, but I've seen little bits of it performed.
But, like,
I believe someone dies in Much Ado About Nothing.
Back to Macbeth. Everyone who dies in Macbeth deserves it, with the exception of Duncan.
Yeah. Oh, and
everyone who dies in that play totally deserves to die.
And Banquo. I feel like maybe Banquo didn't deserve it. Maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, no. I forgot about the baby.
Poor baby Banquo.
But everyone in there deserved to die. But it is still considered a tragedy because so many people died.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we covered the first part of their question. The second is, because it's so divorced from its original meaning, which was basically dick jokes galore, do you think that's why teens find it boring and dry? And I say, abso-fucking-lutely. Also, Romeo and Juliet was never meant to be read.
No.
You're not supposed to read Shakespeare.
You're supposed to hear it and you're supposed to see it, most importantly. You have to see Shakespeare.
So much of what Shakespeare is visual. He didn't write a lot of stage directions, and as theater people, Ari and I both know that
you have to kind of like...
A lot of plays nowadays write when you are supposed to move from left to right. Every single thing is written out, and every version is practically the same. Shakespeare left a lot to interpretation. He would say, you have a fight. He doesn't include descriptors on the fight. That is totally for you as an actor to figure out. Yeah, sorry.
I had to raise my hand because we're over Skype, and I don't know if Jen can actually see or hear me as well as I think she can. I was going to say, like, as an actor, like as a Shakespearean actor, you do really need to know the language of the play and like understand what they mean, but you can get some context based on the language about how you're supposed to move. So like for me, this isn't Romeo and Juliet, but it is Shakespeare. I went to go see a performance of Love's Labour's Lost when I was in high school, and I didn't understand half of what they were saying because I don't speak Elizabethan English, but there was plenty of gestures going along with it that I could understand it. Specifically, when someone made sexual innuendo. There were plenty of gestures going along with it to know that that's what they were talking about. So like, it would probably, it's very highbrow and very dry and very dull when you're sitting in a classroom reading it. But when you're watching the movie and you see Mercutio acting like a total goofball, or if you went and saw it on stage and saw Mercutio with his hip thrusts and his dancing and everything, it's not going to be boring. You're going to have a great time.
Yeah. And that, I do agree that because it's so divorced from its original format in a novel, and even in a podcast like I tried to do to get through it, it's so divorced from the original visual format that it's meant to be.
Scripts are boring.
It's just boring as sin.
Scripts are always boring when you read them. They're not fun until you act them out.
I mean, I don't think all plays are boring when you read them.
Well, no, you're right.
But, like, specifically Romeo and Juliet, I can read other Shakespeare plays fine. Mm-hmm. But Romeo and Juliet, because it relies so much on the visual humor, can't get through it.
Mm-hmm. And it does, I mean, I'm really happy because the second part of that question actually goes into the first. Teenagers find Romeo and Juliet really dull these days because they feel like they have to address it from an academic standpoint. You're sitting there, like, talking about, like, oh yeah, the themes and the motifs and the symbolism and everything. And you do get so wrapped up in the language, which sounds really highbrow when you read it on paper.
It only sounds highbrow because we don't speak like that. That was like the equivalent of saying, yo dude, what up? It's not as complicated as people like to make out that it is.
And I think that in particular is where the Leonardo DiCaprio Claire Danes movie really succeeds.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Because by taking the story, and I mean they're still using the language, but by
they're using all the original language, and it is beautiful. My problem came with the design.
Well, see, but the designing is actually what I liked the most. Because by taking the story and still having the language, and then taking that whole story and dropping it in the middle of California, you get a modern context for it, and you get a modern context.
It was California? I always thought it was Vegas.
No, it's Verona Beach, California. Which is actually a place, I think. If you look that up on a map, Verona Beach, California is a real place.
I don't know why, but I had always pictured it was Vegas, I think because of how gaudy some of the sets were.
But that's the thing about it, is you're taking it and you're dropping it in the middle of a place that's modern. It's hip.
they're using guns instead of swords, and they're all wearing Hawaiian shirts, and they've bleached their hair, and it looks ridiculous. But it's
Fucking
modern.
Hawaiian shirts, though.
But it's modern, and you understand it. You don't know why they're using Elizabethan English, but you understand what's going on because it's in a modern context. It's not dry,
Because
it's not
in
boring.
a context your brain can interpret, which is what Shakespeare wanted.
The Claire Danes Leonardo DiCaprio movie made it not boring, and I think that's why
also
some people
doesn't
like
hurt
it.
that it's Leo.
Of course. Anything with, Guilty, I've never actually seen
I
Titanic.
would like to point out that the girl who plays Juliet actually looks like 13.
Claire Danes hasn't aged, I'm convinced. Claire Danes found the fountain of youth. She hasn't aged a bit
She
in the past
looked
20
like
years.
she was like 12.
She
She
still
fit the role. It's not like nowadays when you have like 27-year-olds who clearly look 27 playing a 15-year-old.
Off topic, have you seen Claire Danes play Cosette? That's the only good part about the Liam Neeson version of Les Mis. Everything else is
I will have to watch it.
Everything else is crap, but Claire Danes looks very good as Cosette. So what's on the docket for next month, Jen?
Alright, the next time we will be going over The Great Gatsby.
Yay! I'm super excited.
Gatsby.
Because Gatsby.
I can't think of proper descriptors.
This is probably going to get cut out, but did you read Great Gatsby when you were in school?
No, I did not.
Have you read it yet?
Not yet. All I know about The Great Gatsby is what my sister has told me. So you are going to get Jen reading Gatsby for the first time and ripping it a new one.
I hear Jay Gatsby was a real hit with the ladies. I'm probably
going to be talking about that.
I need to cut that out because I don't want to take it. I don't want to take other people's jokes.
The month after that is time for my favorite book. We will be doing Pride and Prejudice in July in honor of my birthday.
I trust you implicitly to know everything about Pride and Prejudice because you love it so much. I'm letting you lead the discussion because I've never read it.
I will be taking the wheel on Pride and Prejudice, and Ari will be burning it.
Woo. Okay.
So I will be giving you all the plot points, and Ari will be telling you why this is ridiculous.
From my perspective, from the perspective of someone who's never read it.
Everyone listening to this, start getting your questions in or comments for The Great Gatsby and Pride and Prejudice.
Mm-hmm. You can message us on our Tumblr like the lovely anonymous user who sent us our question for this month did, or you can email us at burnwhlereadingpodcast@gmail.com. And I think that covers all of the business that we need to do for the end of this episode.
So until next time, keep reading.
Keep reading.
Is that a decent sign-off?
We'll find something better to use eventually. Until we do, keep reading, everybody.